Well, we were warned that inflation numbers would be bad. These are the numbers that show us how much consumer prices rose during the month of June. The White House had been sort of running game around this, like preemptively saying, look, the numbers are going to be bad. They probably will be around 8.8%. Now, remember, just last month, the May numbers were 8.6%, and we all freaked out. They're saying they don't reflect the decrease in gas prices. So just, calm yourself. It's going to be okay. We're thinking 8.8%. The numbers came in. It's 9.1%. So it's worse than we were warned.
Yeah, so the Consumer Price Index, which is a measure of everyday goods and services, soared 9.1% from a year ago. Okay, that's above the 8.8% that the Dow Jones estimated, not even the White House. This is the largest move since 1981. Do you remember 1981? Excluding volatile food and energy prices, the so-called core CPI increased 5.9% compared to 5.7%. So food prices, energy prices, stocks also dropped 300 points this morning. Then it moderated about 200 points down on this news. Everything was down. And then CNBC this afternoon, says that this is bad. Further evidence that we have not yet hit even peak inflation. And they're actually saying for the average family, that means you've lost $3,400 in annual savings. I'm just curious, in our chat room, let us know right now, like, in what way are you feeling this? Are you feeling it at the gas pump? Are you feeling it in wages, the amount of money you bring home? Are you feeling it in energy prices, food prices? Let us know in the chat right now, how exactly are you feeling this, and in what way are you feeling it?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because the White House is saying we are not in a recession. These high inflation numbers will be sort of mitigated by the strong labor market because so many people are back to work. It's okay. But it doesn't play out unless everyone has a 9.1% raise from last year, right? Because you're losing money if you are working, right? But the price of goods is increasing and you are not raising your salary commensurate to that increase. Well, then that's just not true. So that's what this Fox News article that we just pointed out tells you, is that you're losing money because your budget from last year is just out the window.
Yeah, $3,400 in annual wages under the Biden administration's inflation. $3,400. Like, that's not a small amount. I even saw an article this afternoon in Politico, which was hilarious. They're trying to normalize this poverty, and I don't have the article in front of me, but it was, wages are going down, and that's a good thing. Or no, raises are going down for workers, and that's a good thing for workers. Like, they're trying to spin this like, okay, so the raise that you were expected to get is going down. That's going to be better for all of us, because that means that goods and service prices won't go up. So this is how the mainstream media and the liberal press is trying to spin this.
Okay.
Well, and I also don't understand where you're coming from, because you know as well as I do that the job numbers are the highest they've ever been in the history of America. So everybody has a job right now. So I don't know why people are complaining.
Yeah, that's true. And the White House, the White House line, that's what we've been hearing from Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, over the past few weeks, which is, this is historic. We're in a transition period. Things are great.
You're fine.
You're fine. What is that North Korea 30 Rock
I think
comment?
about this every time we play any kind of government line, right? Because there was this episode of 30 Rock where the CNBC anchor gets kidnapped to North Korea and they force her to become state-run anchor.
News anchor.
And so they're like, well, we have a clip of Avery on the air in North Korea. And she says, in other news, you've had enough to eat. And that's the news in North Korea, right? And I want to just grab that clip, because it's like the government is telling you, you're all right. You've had enough. Yes, this hurts. It hurts when you go to the pump. It hurts when you go to the market. But you're fine. Quit your belly aching.
So Brian Deasy, the White House is the response this afternoon, because President Biden left town. So he was on a plane when this information was coming out, and it was perfect timing, by the way, wasn't it? Fly out of town, go to Israel, where we send billions of dollars, right? Go to Israel while all of this news is breaking. So you're on Air Force One. You don't have to deal with all of this. So then they sent out these White House lackeys, Brian Deasy, who, of course, is the New World Order guy who let us know last week that you will enjoy all of this pain. This is part of the new
liberal new order.
Liberal world order. Yeah, the liberal world order. So they brought him out today. He's the White House economic advisor to tell us all, you know what, this isn't so bad. And this is more proof that we need to spend more money. Watch this ridiculous thing.
How long are we going to keep saying this is the worst of it?
Well, look, a couple points on today's report, as you just said. The first is, it's backward looking, and it doesn't reflect what we've seen over the last 30 days, which is a significant decline in gas prices, down about 40 cents. That June report, about half of it was driven by energy prices, and we've seen moderation since. But the second point is that in the core, inflation remains too high, which is why we need action. And I just want to underscore, if there's one thing to take away from this report, it's that there is more urgency now than ever in Congress moving to pass a bill to try to build more domestic semiconductors, to try to bring down the price of those goods. You see across this report things like used cars and new vehicles, those prices holding up. That is not principally driven by demand. It's driven by supply and constrained supply. We know how to solve that. We should have solved that months ago, but we now have a moment. We need to do that. If there's any takeaway from this report, it should be that.
Although that brings us right back to the circular argument, Brian, that more spending is not what you typically do in the face of high inflation. How do we break out of that circle?
No, look, I think you have to look at the unique situation that we're in as an economy and think about how do we build more supply? How do we increase the productive capacity of our economy so that we actually can supply more goods, bring prices down? We know the answer on semiconductors exactly. We need more supply of those goods. You were just talking about housing, same issue. Obviously, mortgage rates are going to increase as the Fed continues to tighten. But as we do that, we need to keep home builders building supply, because we know that at core, the housing issue is a lack of affordable supply. It's been a decade or more in the making, but as we move through this transition, providing incentives, for example, for builders to continue to build affordable homes.
Yeah, so more money.
Well, he's really
More money, more
concerned
spending.
about building materials for new houses and building materials for electronics. He mentions nothing about food, right?
Yeah.
I think this is the thing that most people are worried about, not whether or not they can find a new iPhone, but more about whether they can afford their groceries. It's a very tone deaf response.
Right. Well, when you think about the people that lobby Washington, right, they're the people that make money. So, of course, it's big tech, it's Google, it's Amazon, it's Facebook, it's all
Sure.
of the people that funnel money to these, it's the big auto companies, it's all of that. So that's their main concern, is where can someone get a used car right now? No, actually, people are worried about their wages.
Yeah.
They're worried about the rent, which is also skyrocketing. So what are you going to do about that? We're going to spend more, and we're going to also make sure you all have a solar panel on your roof at the same time. So that's our
the
focus.
thing, like,
That's nice.
when you're net negative at the end of the month, like you've got people paying higher gas prices to get to work. They're paying higher food prices. And it's like it's a net negative to even go to your job now for some people. Some people
Yeah.
are actually losing money every month.
To work.
Can you imagine
Yes.
that? That
To
was,
work.
Yeah, I mean, that was me in my 20s, but that was because, you're stupid in your 20s. Like, the amount of money I was making every month wasn't enough to cover my rent or my gas.
Yeah.
And I barely broke even, and I went into debt. And so the report yesterday, we didn't get to show this yesterday, but this just reminded me, if I can find it here, that I don't have it.
Report? I'll
The-
talk about it if you want to search it up.
It was on consumer debt. It was on consumer debt. Okay. It was a
Nope.
So Peter Schiff published a report yesterday about the amount of consumer debt, which ballooned to one of its highest levels in years. So Americans have just taken on an enormous amount of consumer debt. They've been using their credit cards and further going into debt because they can't afford. They don't have enough money coming in every month, so they're relying on credit. They're relying on debt to make grocery
especially
payments.
people who have needs for prescription drugs, and neither party has made good on making those things more affordable. So, and we've talked many times about how these consumer price index numbers, these inflationary numbers, are themselves problematic, right? Because they take, for instance, let's say a Dell computer, right? And the amount you would buy it for this month is actually cheaper than what you would have bought it for last month. So that is not calculated in these prices. There's a lot of sort of math tricks that they do when they calculate these types of things, because obviously electronics get cheaper anyway. So by some estimates, this 9.1 number is not even what you're feeling. Well, last month when we calculated, it was 8.8. Many experts were saying, no, it's actually upwards of 11. So what you're feeling may be closer to 11 to 12 right now.
I want everyone who's watching right now to come closer to your screen. Come closer, because this morning Natalie sent me this article and she said, Can you believe this crap? Did you just hit your screen? I don't mean to walk in your screen. So she sent me an article this morning, and she said, "Can you believe this shit? The Associated Press's take on inflation." So here's the headline: U.S. inflation reached a 40-year high
That's
in June.
That's not the headline, though. They've changed it since.
Oh, they updated the headline?
Because when I texted it to you this morning, what upset me so much was it said government spending. No, it's already.
They've whitewashed it.
It was government spending likely not to blame for inflation. That was the headline. It was something along those lines, but it has since been updated. So they are telling you these inflation numbers are going to be bad, and we are telling you that the government has impunity, right? So already, is it the Associated Press's job to tell you to what's the word, abscond the government, right? Am I using that right?
Abscond?
Do you use it as a verb like that?
I'm not sure, but I managed to find from so this is before they covered it and redacted it earlier. So this was the headline that you had sent. Surging gas prices likely drove U.S. inflation to 40-year high. That was the text that came through, but maybe it auto-updated it in live.
Perhaps, or, okay.
Nevertheless, the Associated Press was out in front basically saying, hey, all this government spending, don't point the finger there. That's not the problem. The problem is Putin's price hike. The Associated Press carrying the water for the Biden administration.
I may be remembering this wrong. It may be even that headline, though, if I'm wrong, is problematic, right? Because they're telling you, and in the first nut graph, I'm going to use the business term.
Of a paragraph.
Yeah, in the nut graph, everyone knows what a nut graph is. If you passed 8th grade English, then they were saying, likely it is not the government, right? It's just gas. Government can't really help that, which is not true. And so, it's not really the government's fault. So just so you know, when you see this bad number, don't be mad at the government. Just, we're all in it together.
They're basically front running it. They're they're out there sort of, again, carrying spinning it, front running it ahead of time. Here's how CNN.
I'm not sure what I'm sorry, but I'm not sure what a nut graph is. I got a C in English. That must have been an A grade level thing.
Everyone watching right now know what a nut graph is? In the chat?
It has nothing to do with legumes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and I took AP English, so
okay,
you had a different
Grand Emperor Putin in our chat says, "Is she Spanish?"
Me?
No. I thought I read it the wrong. Is this Spanish? No, she is. So people are saying no, they don't know what a nut graph is.
It's the.
People are saying no clue.
The summary paragraph in your essay. Didn't you guys learn the nut graph and then the inverted pyramid and then how you construct an essay? Basically, it's like the lead.
Like the first sentence. And then the nut graph summarizes
it's a paragraph that explains the context of your story, basically.
It's the nut of your article, right? Is that where it comes from? The nut of your article?
I suppose. Yeah. I'm sorry for using insider language then. I thought that this was something we all talked about in 8th grade English.
She was a newspaper reporter, so it was common parlance in the newspaper newsrooms when she was a journalist. So
all right. Use it in a sentence.
We always called that an abstract.
Yeah, because I was a slacker and we didn't talk about
the same as an abstract?
Alexandra says, I'm lost. I don't know. Mark says, I don't know. I don't know. Well, anyway, now you know.
Okay.
And knowing is half the battle. So, again, that's how that's how the AP was running with this. Before they even saw the number, they were telling us, don't worry about this. Don't worry about all the government spending, which is, by the way, how we got into this mess. The printing of U.S. dollars, devaluing the U.S. currency. That's exactly how we got into this mess. But leave it to the Associated Press. Here's what CNN...
even crazier. Well, I was going to say, before you could say that, even crazier is the fact that, like, this is the Associated Press. This is like who we generally before depended on for, like, that's the real information coming out from the Associated Press. It's like that was the most credible source, that and Reuters.
Right.
And it's like now it's just a propaganda tool now.
Of course. And just like we saw in Ukraine, the Associated Press reporters in Ukraine are now actually covering the areas that they're purported to be reporting on, right? So anyway, CNN. This was CNN this afternoon talking about these inflation numbers, and CNN has a new poll out showing the number one issue facing Americans right now. And surprise, surprise, it's not the January 6th hearings. Listen.
What is the top issue for Americans at this point, and who is trusted on that? The top issue for Americans at this point is not the January 6th committee hearings. It is not Donald Trump. It's inflation, according to 33% of Americans. That is the top issue. And who is trusted more on the issue of inflation? The margin right here is absolutely huge. Republicans are trusted over Democrats by 19 points, and that is why, at this particular point, Republicans still lead on that generic congressional ballot.
Shocking. Really? More Americans aren't concerned about the January 6th circus than they are about inflation. That's unbelievable. But President Biden, of course, continues to talk about this as a problem from the GOP. He's blaming it on Republicans. He was front-running this as well just a few days ago, blaming the Republicans on inflation and, of course, blaming it on Putin.
And that's why what we're doing here is so important. Let me close with this. We made incredible progress on the economy from where we were a year and a half ago. We got a long way to go because of inflation, because of I call it the Putin tax increase. Putin, because of gasoline and all that grain he's keeping from being able to get to the market. Now I'm fighting like hell to lower costs on things that you talk about around your kitchen table. My dad used to say at the end of the day, it's just when you sit at that table, do you have enough money to pay for everything you need? Not a lot over. Do you have enough money to pay for everything you need? Well, Republicans do nothing to obstruct our efforts to lower your gas taxes. I propose that. I've asked the Congress to eliminate the federal gas tax.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Did
Republicans.
you see the girl on the left behind
Nodding
him when
her
he said that about the Putin thing?
Yeah.
And she's just like, eh.
Yeah. She's like, oh, here we go. I love to watch their responses behind. He's like, I call it the Putin price hike. And they're like, no, not that again.
Well,
none of us are buying that crap. Why do you keep saying it?
Also, they continue to act like they just came up with it, like it's off the cuff, like me and that stupid nut graph thing I just said, right? So they're like, I call it, as if, and they're like,
I call it the Putin
it's the
price
faux
hike.
Spontaneity of it that's really getting me, because I'm like, look, we all know that this was spun by your public relations team. So
Right.
don't
Well, it's
pretend
like that whole-
you just made it up.
They come up with these little slogans like we don't want it to come in the form of a mushroom cloud or whatever. And then it's like they just all go after it and use that same terminology. And then people just start to believe it. There are people that literally believe, like when we did a poll on the channel, there was like 9 or 12% of people actually believe that this is Putin's fault. Out of like 100 and some thousand votes.
Because if they sit there and they watch CNN or they watch, they just get their news from one source that's spoon-fed from the White House, then of course that's what they're going to think. It's propaganda. I mean, that's at the end of the day why it works. Propaganda works, right? That's why on this channel we try to bring you the truth and try to uncover the actual news and the actual facts here without an agenda. That's why one of the big issues on all of this is President Biden flying to Saudi Arabia. The other big piece of this inflation story and the gas story is that, so today, President Biden flying to Saudi Arabia. He landed first in Israel, giving a speech there, meeting with Israeli leaders, and then off to Saudi Arabia. Lots of questions as to whether or not he's going to push Saudi Arabia on the death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Is he going to push them on the
whether
human
he will
rights
meet with the
edition?
Crown Prince MBS that's responsible for that when he said that he wouldn't.
Right.
And whether or not he actually gets what he is going there for, which is the release of more oil, which Saudi Arabia has said repeatedly they don't want to do. And they are losing confidence in the United States. They are continuously thinking that selling more oil to China seems like a better idea than all the sort of complicated business that they've got with the United States right now. And the president is going there to sort of change his mind, right? Will it work? Will it sort of discourage this petro yuan? Will it? I mean, there's so much writing on this, and it could be a big success when you think of if you are pro-American hegemony when it comes to the dollar, or it could be a big flop.
So you remember what the president said, then candidate Biden, about Saudi Arabia. He was asked specifically about this and how he would carry himself as president against Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, who funded what we saw on 9/11, right? The reason the World Trade Towers came down, Saudi Arabia, right? So why do we have such a cushy relationship with them? And he said we were going to treat them like a pariah. Here he is.
We were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are.
Oh, they're pariah, right? Now I'm going there to kiss their feet and hope that they'll send more oil to us because we're screwing over oil leases in the United States, and what we're doing is not working. Well, Vladimir Putin yesterday...
Why is he going out of the country to beg Saudi Arabia for oil at the same time shipping our oil out, our emergency reserves? Like,
well, on
that
top
makes
of
no
that,
sense.
Canceling leases, right? I mean, canceling leases that oil companies should have access to. And the oil companies were asked about this. There was a congressional hearing on this just this morning on these oil leases. And these oil executives like, no, we absolutely wanted these leases. You canceled them before we had a chance to actually take part of these oil leases. And why?
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah. So we're canceling oil leases that they would actually want to use, not the ones that are on areas that don't have oil underneath them on these federal lands. And we're going to Saudi Arabia to kiss their butts. So Vladimir Putin says, this is all your creation. Vladimir Putin giving a speech yesterday on this issue. Take a listen.
Да, мы знаем, европейцы пытаются заместить российские энергоресурсы. Однако результат таких действий ожидаем. Это рост цен на газ на спотовом рынке и увеличение стоимости энергоресурсов для конечных потребителей, в том числе для домохозяйств. Все это еще раз показывает, что санкционные ограничения в отношении России гораздо больший ущерб наносят именно тем странам, которые их и вводят. Дальнейшее использование санкционной политики может привести к еще более тяжелым, без преувеличения, даже катастрофическим последствиям на мировом энергетическом рынке.
Let us know your thoughts on that in the chat below. President Biden flying to Saudi Arabia. Inflation numbers 9.1%, record-breaking numbers. And as CNBC says, there's no relief anywhere. CNBC saying there's no relief anywhere.
And really quick, which mainstream media source did you get that Putin speech from? Because I didn't see that on any like MSNBC or anything. Where did you grab that?
It actually was hard to find.
Oh, you can't find it. Good luck finding it. You're not going to find it anywhere.
So you mean CNN or none of them? They don't report on anything Putin says?
No.
At all?
No.
Wow.
They don't do that. No, they do. That's why I play these speeches, because when he, like Putin, over the years, when he says things, you may hate it. I don't care how you agree with it or not, but when he usually says things, he usually tells you exactly what he's going to do, and then he does it. And then everyone's shocked. Like, what is he doing? He's actually doing this? Yeah, he said it in a speech. Oh, well, we don't get to see that speech because you keep it from us. So we don't know what he says, right? So anyway, that's why I play it here. So you can make your own decisions about it and your own determinations about it.
Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.